Hello, I'm Lena Lim, Associate Professor from the Department of Physiology, Yong School of Medicine, one of the members of the WISH Exco, and also a member of the Voices of Singapore Ladies Choir. As one of the few women's choirs in Singapore, we aim to bring together women through inspiring musical performances and to showcase the beauty and the versatility of the female voice. Like many of us at this webinar, the women at the Voices of Singapore Ladies Choir are of different ages, from the young to the very wise, wear many hats in our society and play different and some multiple roles. Some of us are semi-professional musicians, passionate amateurs, teachers, students, working professionals, and homemakers. Yet with such diverse backgrounds, we converge with music in our hearts to create an environment where women support other women and women empower other women. We hope you have enjoyed our songs. I also hope you will stay to the end of today's program for a very special surprise, not just from the ladies, but all of the Voices of Singapore. Enjoy.
Welcome to the third and final chapter of our WISH webinar trilogy, organized by the Women in Science and Healthcare at the National University Health System and the Equal Opportunities and Career Development Office of the Yong School of Medicine, National University of Singapore. I'm Sophia Archuleta. I'm the WISH president and one of your hosts for today. Let's jump right in. As we saw in our first two webinars, COVID-19 has brought both positive attention and opportunities to showcase women's roles in science, healthcare, and the pandemic response. but it has also increased the heavy burden women bear in their multiple roles at work and at home. This has the potential to accentuate gender inequalities in the workplace with long-term implications on women's careers and livelihoods. It is thus very timely that Singapore announced in September a review of women's issues, leading to a white paper next year. In our program this afternoon, we'll explore some of these issues as we hear from our distinguished guests. We have guest of honor, Minister Indranee Rajah from the Prime Minister's Office, Second Minister for Finance and National Development. We're also joined by Associate Professor Audrey Chia, who is also Director of Leadership Development Program at the National University of Singapore Business School and is a Joint Associate Professor at the Yong School of Medicine. Also with us and joining our panel later during the program will be Professor Doris Yong, who's our inaugural head in the Department of Family Medicine at the National University Health System and has been a mentor to the NUHS WISH project since its inception. Our format today is going to be a mix of talks and panel discussion. We will also have a couple of surprises thrown in. I am now very pleased to introduce my partner in crime, my co-host for the webinar trilogy, Raymond Chow. He's Vice President, Central Asia at Becton Dickinson. He's been a diversity enabler, a he for she champion, and has also been very busy on his side of the COVID-19 response. Raymond, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Good afternoon, everyone who has once again logged in from multiple locations to be with us again on this third and final Lunch and Learn series webinar, Women in the Workplace, Creating a More Equitable Future. And as Sophia has so kindly introduced, I'm Raymond Chow from Becton Dickinson, a medical device company that is helping advance the world of health through medical discovery, diagnostics, and delivery of care. Coincidentally, for those of you who are in Singapore, you may have seen BD actively involved in the current COVID-19 antigen rapid test trials that are happening island-wide in Singapore. Before we go on to the program proper, I would like to express my thanks to Sophia and the organizing committee for once again having me to co-host this webinar. It has been my utmost privilege to have had the opportunity to be amongst the distinguished panel speakers whom we've had for the past two webinars and once again for today's event as well. As Sophia introduced, we do have an exciting agenda today, and I'll encourage all participants to please stay right till the end of the webinar where we will have the panel discussion. If you do have questions, please do write your questions or comments in the Q&A box, which you will find at the bottom right of the control panel. Please do state your name, where you're writing from, and most importantly, to whom you are addressing the question to. We have planned to have sufficient time to get to some of your questions answered live, but for those that we are unable to do, we will respond to those questions either directly through the Q&A box or after the event. I would also like to share that we do have a record of more than 550 registrants for today's event. And also we have media reps from Channel News Asia, Straits Times, and Taobao attending this webinar today. So let us jump right into the first speaker of today, and he is going to be giving us a recorded welcome message, and he's none other than the Chief Executive of the National University Health System, Professor Yeo Kay Guan.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Yeo Kay Guan, Chief Executive of the National University Health System. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to the third and final installment of the WISH webinar, Women in the Workplace. The well-known saying goes, women hold up half the sky. At NUHS, women certainly hold up way more than half the sky. More than 80% of our 15,000 staff are women. In our 5,000-strong nursing team, 9 out of 10 are women. Our group chiefs of finance, HR, IT, communications, and procurement are all female. That being said, there is gender disparity at the CEO and clinical heads level. It is abundantly clear that our goals and aspirations in our clinical care, research, and education missions can only be achieved with the strong support of the women in our NUHS family. We really cannot do it without you. As a family, we want to take care of one another. We want to help everyone excel in their personal aspirations, develop as a whole person, and thrive both at work as well as at home. We want to provide everyone with equal opportunity as well as access to support and resources to do so. Our HR strives to enact family-friendly workplace policies and practices, including flexible work arrangements which support a balanced share of care and family responsibilities. A cluster policy on professional behavior is being introduced to make our workplace a more positive and inclusive one for everyone. We want everyone to know that if something's not right, you can and should speak up. We will listen and will give you the support you need. The late US Supreme Court Justice and pioneering women's advocate, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, said, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception." Just last month, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2020 was awarded jointly to Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna for the development of a method for genome editing, marking the first time the award has gone to an all-female team. It is my fervent hope to see more women represented at all levels of leadership in NUHS, including in research. I want to encourage all our female colleagues and indeed everyone, think big and aim high. Don't limit yourself and no one will be able to stop you. I'd like to thank and to welcome Minister Indranee Rajah from the Prime Minister's Office, who very kindly accepted our invitation to join us this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time off your schedule, Minister. We look forward to hearing your perspective and insights. I'd like to wish all of you a very successful event and hope you all enjoy the webinar.
It's now my great pleasure to bring on our guest of honor, Minister Indranee Rajah. Minister, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Yeo and NUHS Women in Science, Healthcare, or the WISH Group, for inviting me to this webinar. And I would like to thank you all for making time to join us today. It's been a challenging year for everyone, and especially for healthcare professionals like yourselves, who are at the front lines of our battle against COVID-19. In your various roles, whether as doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, or other roles, you have, through your dedication, professionalism, and sacrifices, helped keep us safe. So to all of you, a big thank you. COVID-19 has upended many things, including the way we think about work and how work and life can be organized. It has forced a global pause. It's forced us to reflect and rethink many assumptions. But at the same time, this presents a unique opportunity to reshape norms as we know them and to ask ourselves, what can and should we do differently, and how do we go about it? One of these areas which bears rethinking are norms for women in Singapore. We have, since independence, always espoused the cause of women. After forming the government in 1959, one of the first things the PAP government did was to legislate the Women's Charter, and that was a huge step for its time. Since then, we have, over the years, put in place many policies advancing the interests of women and passed many laws that directly or indirectly protect women. The most recent being or including the amendments to the Penal Code and the Protection Against Harassment Act. We've also made strides in leadership positions. You know, between 1970 and 1984, we had no women members of parliament at all. In 1984, we had 3. When I entered parliament after the 2001 general elections, we had 10 elected female MPs in parliament, but no female full ministers. Today, 19 years on, we have 27 elected female MPs, with 3 who are full ministers and several senior ministers of state, as well as ministers of state. Likewise, there has been similar progress in the representation of women in senior leadership positions, from holding 7.5% of board seats in Singapore's top 100 listed companies in 2013 to 16.2% in December 2019. However, as Prof. Yeo said, there is always room to do better. And a key factor in this will be to challenge and rethink existing gender norms, be it in the home, at the workplace, or the wider society. So let's think about how we can rethink norms in the home. Women have multifaceted roles. We are daughters, wives, mothers, and in some cases, grandmothers. Women who pursue careers are also generally still the main caregiver to their children and increasingly for our aging parents. All this while being responsible for the domestic duties at home. During the circuit breaker period, many mothers had to grapple with keeping the house in order whilst juggling work, childcare, and home-based learning. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that men and fathers don't help out at all. There are many men who play an active role in these areas, and I do see more and more young fathers involved in raising their children and spending time with them. However, it is fair to say that in general, women still do carry a disproportionately heavier load of family responsibilities. And this is one of the norms that should change. We should move quickly to a society where the norm is one of more equal sharing of parenting and domestic responsibilities in all households. There are positive signs that things are trending that way. Men today participate more than the previous generations in raising and caring for their children. The Dads for Life movement that was started in 2009 and driven by the Center for Fathering does wonderful work in encouraging this mindset change. We need more such ground-up efforts to continue to encourage fathers to play a more active role. International studies have shown that children with more involved fathers have better physical, cognitive, and emotional developmental outcomes. Greater paternal involvement in child raising also helps mothers to stay active in the workforce. On our part, the government has also improved our parental leave schemes over the years to encourage shared parenting and to enable fathers to play a bigger role in raising their children. In 2017, we made it mandatory for employers to provide the second week of paternity leave and extended the duration of shared parental leave from 1 to 4 weeks. Childcare and infant care leave provisions are also extended equally to working fathers and mothers. But it's not enough to change the norms at home. We need to change the norms in the workplace too. We need more progressive workplace practices and supportive employers and co-workers. The proverbial glass ceiling that may exist for women in some industries also needs to be broken. First, family-friendly workplace practices are key. Other than having understanding bosses and colleagues, being able to have flexible work arrangements help many workers to better juggle their responsibilities at work and at home. Many enlightened employers have introduced flexible work arrangements, and in fact, NUHS is one such employer. Despite having a large proportion of jobs which require in-person interaction with patients, you've put in place measures such as staggered working hours, part-time arrangements, and teleworking to help employees achieve better work-life harmony. I understand that these practices stem from a belief at NUHS that having work-life harmony can reduce stress levels while improving productivity. This also mirrors the practices put in place across our other healthcare institutions. This is a fundamental rethink about the relationship between working hours and productivity that I think more organizations should have. These are all encouraging signs of such a mindset shift. Today, 85% of companies hiring 92% of the workforce offer some form of flexible work arrangements or FWAs. This follows from the tripartite standards for FWAs and for unpaid leave for unexpected care needs that were introduced in 2017 and 2018, respectively. Compared to 2019, we saw a threefold increase in the adoption of both tripartite standards this year. The silver lining of the COVID-19 pandemic is that it has helped both employers and employees see that working from home and flexible work arrangements are possible without detriment to the organization. The government will continue to work with the employers and to study ways to increase the adoption and the use of FWAs across workplaces. I hope that this will, in time, help more women and men better achieve work-life harmony and complement changes in gender norms in the home. Next, women in male-dominated domains. It's encouraging that there is a steady increase in the labor force participation rate for women in Singapore. Around 61% of women are employed in the workforce today, an increase from the 55% and 50% just 1 and 2 decades ago previously. Efforts have been made to promote jobs in traditionally male-dominated STEM and cybersecurity industries for women. Agencies like the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore are making a concerted push for good jobs in the cybersecurity industry for women, as recently highlighted in the Women in Cyber event. MOE's deliberate efforts to give both genders exposure to STEM-related opportunities in recent years have paid off. 37% of female students, above OECD's average of 32%, expect to work in STEM in Singapore today. We also need to identify and nurture more female leaders. There has been some progress in this regard. In 2019, women represented 16.2% of the boards of the top 100 SGX-listed companies, as compared to 7.5% in 2013. The Council for Board Diversity will continue to look into increasing women's representations on boards, not just in the private sector, but in the people and public sector as well. So we must press on with these efforts while still adhering to assessment on the basis of merit. Next, to create a more equitable future, societal norms are key. Minds are shaped from a very young age, and to break gender stereotypes in society, we'll have to start with our children early on. Girls and boys have equal access to the range of learning opportunities offered by schools. For instance, we introduced computational thinking and compulsory coding classes for both boys and girls in the upper primary levels, with the aim to equip all our young with such digital capabilities. In lower secondary levels, both boys and girls also take food and consumer education and design and technology classes. So gone are the days when it was boys who took technical science and girls had to take home econs. In fact, I understand that the proportion of male students in NUS nursing has increased over time as well. We must also be mindful that our societal norms must evolve with societal changes. Jokes, comments, and attitudes that may have been acceptable decades ago may no longer be acceptable today. Whilst the internet has connected everyone, it has also enabled harassment and cyberbullying, and oftentimes women are at the receiving end. We must be a society that acts with genuine and sincere mutual respect and courtesy between genders without losing our sense of humor or being paralyzed by political correctness. Minister for Law and Home Affairs, Mr. K. Shanmugam, had earlier announced a task force on women's issues. We're starting a series of conversations focused on women-related issues to better support women in Singapore. This is supported by the Ministry of Social and Family Development, MSF, and the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, or MCCY. The conversations will allow us to better understand Singaporeans' aspirations for our women and the mindset changes required to help find their fullest potential. So I would encourage all of you to participate in these. This would pave the way for women's development and hopefully cultivate a better and more inclusive society for all. Insights and feedback from the conversations will feed into a white paper to be delivered in Parliament next year. One of the key priorities in my new portfolio under the National Population and Talent Division in the Prime Minister's Office is to improve the support for Singaporeans in their marriage and parenthood journey. A key aspect of this support is to develop good quality infant and child care that is affordable and accessible. This would help mothers to return to work and enjoy a peace of mind that their children are well cared for. Wider societal support support and a culture that celebrates families are also important in enabling women to pursue their career goals while raising their families. In June this year, we launched the Made for Families initiative to encourage more businesses and community groups to play a part in fostering a family-friendly ecosystem and a more conducive and joyful pro-family workplaces. To date, more than 60 companies have expressed their interest to participate. We hope that more can join us and play a part so that we can better support families as a Singapore society. I firmly believe that it is our collective responsibility and interest to create an equitable future for both women and men in Singapore. We can start by challenging long-held assumptions and rethinking traditional gender norms. So thank you once again for this invitation and the opportunity to share my thoughts. And I look forward to a fruitful panel discussion and hearing your views on this topic. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Minister, for giving us so much to think about. We will see you again soon for the panel discussion. Next up, we asked our NUHS staff a couple of interesting questions. Here is what they had to say.
That all of us will regard each other with equal respect, regardless of gender, race, religion, profession, or designation. We are one and the same, united by a shared vision to optimize patient care.
I wish to see more young women and men from minority groups in positions of recognition in science and healthcare, so that others may see the good work they're doing and be inspired by them.
To raise awareness and to discuss this issue, I wish we have more of those in my workplace. It's not just for the working consultant, for medical student, for junior resident, really to share with them some of our experiences and challenges, and perhaps share some tips and tricks and how we have walked through those issues.
In our workplace, we really need to have an environment, a culture which allows someone, whether that person is a man or a woman or a boy or a girl, to be able to fulfill his or her potential as much as he or she wants that potential to be fulfilled. We need this culture regardless of gender, and I think that it's something that we all should wish for, and not just wish for, that we should all work towards.
Well, I will wish for a work environment that is more family friendly, so that fathers and mothers, especially mothers with young families, will be less hesitant to step forward to serve in leadership roles.
I think in the workplace, I would really like to see more awareness, and with awareness, it comes recognition, as well as acknowledgement of the problem, that this is not just a problem of some people, but it's a problem faced by everyone, and everyone has a part to play. So I would really like to see more participation in things such as the Wish Lunch and Learn series, as well as in our workshops.
What I wish for an equitable future is for every woman who desires to reach a particular goal to be supported. And the support needs to come from all places. It needs to come from her colleagues at work, her superiors, as well as the support structure that she has at home. So I think we as women need to lean in, quoting Sheryl Sandberg, and fight for what we want. At the same time, we need support, and we need to keep our friends all along the journey.
I hope for a workplace where there is a fair representation of people from different backgrounds and who have different experiences, and basically a workplace where everyone excels, right, regardless of the barriers that they face in their personal or professional lives. So I hope we can implement equity practices that acknowledge the differences that individuals face and remove biases, as well as promote, most importantly, promote differentiated support that individuals need in order to fully thrive and participate in the work.
I wish for a workplace where I can meet and interact with people from different races, nationality, personality, and education background, and maybe even those with disabilities. I wish for a workplace where everyone will receive an equal opportunity to be recognized, trained, developed holistically, professionally, regardless of their position or qualification.
more flexible work arrangements to provide work-life balance without compromising the actual workforce, as well as provide platforms to allow women to actually be trained for senior leadership positions through the use of automation or artificial intelligence, so that we would still be able to fulfill our roles both professionally as well as at a personal level.
I feel that right now as a medical student, we have not actually felt much of a gender equality difference, and actually some of our batches even have more females than males. So some specialties allow us to join them and actually do not discriminate between females and males. So it makes me very hopeful that there will be more equality in gender in the future.
As we've heard from Minister Indranee earlier, we have come a long way. Singapore has come a long way to achieving that equitable future. But as we see from the video montage, we still have a long runway to a more equitable future, and we are hopeful that that will happen sometime soon. It is now really apt to introduce our next speaker in the lineup today, who will address some questions we probably developed in our minds after listening to the number of wishes we heard in the video. Questions like, has anything changed over the years, and what are some of the recent developments? And to bring us through this, we have Associate Professor Audrey Chia, and as Sophia introduced earlier, Associate Professor Audrey Chia is an Prof at the NUHS Business School with a concurrent joint appointment at the Yong School of Medicine, National University of Singapore. She is also the Program Management Chair of the Master of Science Environmental Management Program, which is a collaboration by 9 faculties and schools across the NUHS. Over to you, Prof. Audrey.
Thank you very much, Raymond, and thank you, Minister, for giving us such a great background. So let me jump right in. It is really appropriate. Just look at today's date, right? We are wishing for a more equitable future, and it's 11/11/2020, right? And that's the kind of proportion that we are looking forward to, right? So I've divided my presentation. I've been asked to plan for 20 minutes. I've decided to take it in 3 parts. The first part reflects on, has anything changed? And we want to take a deep dive into that. Then we will go on to common organizational approaches to looking at issues that men and women face. And we will again go and look at their underlying assumptions, as Minister has suggested. And we'll take a look at some more recent approaches that have emerged. So just take a few seconds. What comes to your mind? Fill in this blank. We live in a what world? You can use the Q&A to answer, and I'd love to see your answers. What kind of world do we live in? And let's go forward with some clues. Who created office hours? And who made the rules at work? Who is more likely to engage in paid work outside the home? And who is still considered head of the household? And who has traditionally worked at home, unpaid? Right? These are some of the social norms that we are still facing. They are things that we still encounter on a daily basis. Yeah. So my answer is that we live in a man-made world. Why? Well, let's go back to this landmark book that was written in 1977, Men and Women of the Corporation. And it's very clear from this book that women are Janie come lately. We are newcomers when compared to men to the corporate world. And we have to live and work under institutional rules and power structures that were there even before we arrived. So fast forward to 1989. This is another key book that came out. The second shift, and this is what Minister Indranee Rajah talked about, that women perform another full shift of work at home after a full day of work. And this is about all kinds of things: laundry, childcare, elder care, or just keeping things neat and tidy, right? And these books highlighted the fact that women carry additional responsibilities. You can call them burdens. Some people call them their joy and their privilege, right? But we have more to handle. And very early in my career, I co-wrote this book with two of my colleagues. And sorry for the typo there. We talked about 3 paradoxes. At the national level, we are encouraged to be productive, both at work and at home. And our society and families do expect women who are educated to earn an income and to bear children, but also to act as caregivers and perform or supervise domestic work. And at the workplace, as pointed out earlier, we have higher levels of education and workforce participation. But we have made progress, but we are still underrepresented at higher levels. This book came out in 1999. So the question we should ask is, are these paradoxes still with us? And if they are, what can we do about them? In 1997, this book came out. Again, it's by Ali Hochschild, but look at how she's changed her tune, right? Around that time, she wrote about how workplaces became so seductive and pleasant to work in, right? So workplaces were offering buffet breakfasts, clean pantries, organized desks, and the workplace actually provided a pleasant escape from home, which perhaps is not always in the best shape. Yeah, and provided an escape from childcare, domestic responsibilities. But with COVID-19, that's not the case anymore. So COVID-19 has been called the Great Reset. So is it the Great Reset or is it the Great Regression, right? It's very hard to ignore our domestic responsibilities when they are there, right in front of us. But at the same time, I agree this is a great time to re-examine our assumptions, right? So that's the background, and that shows some of the prevailing or institutional norms in society. And I agree with what's been said earlier. We have to move towards equity. So let's take a closer look at this concept of equity. And I thought, since this is being hosted by NUHS, why don't we look at the definition of health equity, which has been given out by WHO. And you can see the definition there. And it's the absence of avoidable or remediable differences among groups of people, right? Whether these groups are defined socially, economically, demographically, or geographically. And the parallel to that at the workplace is that we are looking at opportunities, rewards, and recognition, being as accessible as possible to groups that are different, whether they are men, women, come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, have different age, or are in different locations. That's the kind of equity that we should be striving for. And of course, we heard all that in the video before this, right? So how then, what can workplaces do? So we have to acknowledge, as has been acknowledged earlier, that social norms and values flow from society into work and vice versa, right? And in moving towards equity, workplaces sometimes have to swim against the tide. And yet, of course, we are part of society, right? So as citizens of society, we too should strive for better society. So what has been done? So now I invite you to think about your own workplace. Think about your workplace and ask yourself, which approach has your organization taken with regard to looking at men and women at work? And there are a few common approaches that I'm going to be addressing here. The first of these, which sounds very familiar, is that of blind or meritocracy. So people will say things like, oh, we are gender blind. We don't look at whether you're male or female. It's all based on merit, right? So we appoint, we promote, we reward based on merit. How well have you done? What's your performance been? Does that sound good? I think to most of us, at first glance, it sounds really good. Yeah. And our job here is really to examine some of these approaches more deeply. So we should ask questions. In evaluating merit, what are the criteria? Who decided on the criteria? Who designed this system of evaluation? And how is performance actually measured, right? And who does the measuring and evaluation? All these, I feel, are important questions, because when we dig deeper, we might find that it's the people who have held power for a long time who are actually responsible for designing these evaluation systems or deciding on the criteria or evaluating candidates. So we have to stand back and ask these questions of our own organizations. Yeah. There have been other observations about merit. Some of you may have come across this book by Michael Sandel. It's a recent book, and it talks about the tyranny of merit. And the questions that are asked in that book are, is merit truly earned? You know, when we say we have achieved something, wow, I got a PhD. Wow, I got a paper that came out in a medical journal, right? Did we truly earn it? This is what Michael Sandel is asking. We have to acknowledge that there are certain factors that have contributed to our achievement. Some of us have economic and social advantages. For me, I grew up in an English-speaking household. I had a grandfather who gave me spelling tests on my way to school, right? So I was lucky that way, yeah? And there is something about luck and timing that contributes to our achievements. And Sandel says we ought to be humble enough to recognize that, right? And, why is merit, using a merit-based system, why is it tyrannical, right? The idea is that the emphasis on merit may actually perpetuate existing advantages. So we've risen to a certain level, and therefore we can decide what merit is, and we can decide who qualifies as having merit or not, right? So these are some of the questions that we ought to be thinking about or asking ourselves when we look at meritocratic systems. It's not to say we throw it completely out of the window, but we have to think about how to do it better. Now, the next approach, which is very common, and we see this all the time, is about representation targets. So there's a metric that goes on. How many % of women take up board seats? How many % of women are in the workforce? And so on, right? And that's good if we track them, right? In some companies, though, they've gone further to say that a certain proportion of these places should be given to women, whether it's 10%, 20%, and so on, right? And we should be asking ourselves, how are these targets determined? Where do they come from, right? And further, we should be asking, who cuts the pie? Who decides how big the pie is anyway? And who decides how much to apportion to women, right? Is this a little bit condescending in the sense that we are saying, okay, you can have part of the pie, yeah, maybe 1/4, yeah? Or could it be superficial as has been leveled against this approach, right? That people say, oh, well, then you'll just descend. A lot of sociologists have told me this. You will just descend into tokenism and window dressing. Well, people will just put you out there and say, we've checked the box. We have women. Yeah, right? And let me share my own experience here. Several years ago, I was working with Catalyst, which is a company that helps Fortune 500 companies on their diversity initiatives. So I was a consultant to the consultant. And this particular company, which is a global company and has operations all over the world, was very intent on having leaders local, head of the company to be local, right? So the country head had to be a local. And they had gone on to do that. And not only that, they had set targets for local nationals to take up positions of management. And they thought they had done quite well. They presented their report card to us and said, look, this is really great. And we were looking at them in various countries, and there was the report card for the Philippines. And so what we did was we did a little bit of digging to see, yes, you have these local nationals and you've done it, right? And what we found was that the local nationals who took up these positions, and filled that quota were all from high socioeconomic classes. They all came from private universities, and they all belonged to the much higher socioeconomic group. It's not surprising, right? But they turned around and said, well, we've fulfilled the nationality quota. But we said, well, is this really representative, right? And to that company's credit, they actually said, no, we didn't realize that we had recruited, all from private universities. And not only that, they tended to be people who had joined this company from 3 major organizations before this, right? So they were really sampling a very narrow and specific pool of people to meet their quota, yeah. So sometimes, when we pay too much attention to one dimension, there may be unintended consequences, yeah. So that's the point here, that we perhaps have to look beyond just, male and female, yeah. And there's, of course, attribution, right? So when a woman gets a position, people will say, yeah, she just got it because she's a woman, yeah. And that could be either empowering or actually pretty disempowering if people look at you as, being put there just because you're female. Yeah. So these are some of the issues that we have to grapple with even as we set these targets. And they are important in guiding us towards our goal. But we have to be conscious of all these unintended consequences. Then another approach I've seen is that of matching. And this approach is more like, let's match our customers and important stakeholders. Therefore, we put women in positions where people are more likely to want to see them. For example, beauty consultant, right? And this is based on just, a woman having similar characteristics to the customer, right? And perhaps having some relevant knowledge or skills for engaging the customer, right? And again, I would say this is more unidimensional. It's still one dimension, and it's externally driven. It's not driven by the company, right? It really varies with external stakeholders' tastes and so on. And I would say the similarity is quite superficial, and there's no real attempt to change anything. But it does work for the companies, right? They say that, it improves their business and so on. So that's the matching approach. So another exercise here, I would like to invite everyone to think about how you would describe yourself. I am. Just write as many words as possible to describe yourself. The other thing, of course, is how do others see you? And which aspects of our social identity are most visible? We can't help it. It's really obvious to other people, whether we are man or woman, and our clothes and physical features actually give us away on that, right? And it's more salient than education, religion, nationality, or even age, yeah? And it's a convenient way of identifying people. But I'm sure you wrote down more than just whether you're a man or a woman. And for women, most of us would say we are more than a woman, yeah. So we come to the fourth approach, which many of us have probably heard about already, diversity and inclusion. And this recognizes that women and men are different biologically. We also go through different gender socialization, and we have different life experiences. This leads to us having different views on things and different ways of thinking, different ways of solving problems, and maybe having different values or approaches to getting things done. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. In diversity and inclusion, the idea is that we can broaden the talent pool, and it actually improves our creativity, right? We're always looking at doing things differently and widening our range of solutions. And the focus then is about how do we adapt the workplace to accommodate people with different characteristics and abilities. This has been met by another wave, which has come from actually the very strident feminists and has political overtones, and originated in the US, the idea of intersectionality. And over there, people were very concerned about the intersection between race and womanhood. But I think we can just use this concept without all those connotations. And the idea is to look at everyone as an intersection of many different dimensions, right? So we are not just male and female, right? Should we just focus on being male or female? Aren't there other things in there too, like race, age, socioeconomic status, and so on, as we saw in the video just now? There's much more to diversity than that, right? And it's at the workplace, it might be useful to consider these intersections, for example, what I've presented here, and realize that we all have different starting points, especially if we're trying to look at merit, right? And of course, we want to look also at how we can make the ground more level. How can we make the starting point more alike for everybody? And I'm really glad to hear about all the initiatives that we are currently taking in Singapore outside of the workplace earlier on in life. I think that will make a big difference if we do it right. So the implications of intersectionality is that women are not all the same, right? We need to consider gender along with a plethora of other factors, and we need to have a more holistic view of each person and give each person that individual consideration they deserve. So here are our challenges then. How do we create a work environment that's supportive of diversity and inclusion? And yes, we have leave schemes, flex work schemes. What we notice is that women are more likely to take up these schemes, not men, right? So how do we push men to also make use of these schemes more enthusiastically? Yeah. There's also a leaky pipeline. It's been a perennial problem. We have women at the earlier stages, and then they drop out of the race towards leadership when they have children and so on. So we have to consider, how to fix those leaks. Yeah, and I hope we can discuss some of that later. So what can workplaces do? So I think the first thing to do is to really know the approaches and their assumptions and be alert to the unintended consequences of whatever it is we're trying to do. We have to go deeper to examine our reward systems, organizational structures, and so on, for any biases that have been built in to the systems, right? And at the same time, recognize the multiple facets of each person, not just male or female. We should consider the work environment and culture and the signals that we send to our employees, right? Even from, for example, we talked about criteria, performance criteria, and so on. What signals are we sending about what is desired or important at work? We should cultivate cultural intelligence, and a big part of this means reflecting on our assumptions about people and adjusting our assumptions when we interact with them. We could all be better at that. And finally, at workplaces, it's not enough to do our own thing. I think workplaces could definitely engage with other stakeholders in society as we try to make all this social change. So thank you very much. I look forward to our panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Prof. Audrey, for that enlightening talk. Why I say enlightening? Because I don't know about many of the listeners out there, but there were many points in there that made me think, and which I do not have answers to. So maybe we can address and get those answers during the panel discussion a little later. So I will take this opportunity to remind all participants to please continue to post your questions in the Q&A box. We will get to these questions during the panel discussion at the end of the session. As we've heard from Prof. Audrey about what can organizations and workplaces do, we now want to share a second video on what can you as an individual do for a more equitable future.
I pledge to respect all my colleagues equally and play my part in creating a more equitable and pleasant workplace for the future.
My aim is to take affirmative action by mentoring young women and men from minority groups or who haven't had a strong background in science and healthcare to give them the opportunities in these fields which they may have previously lacked.
As a department, we are progressive, that we are promoting women into leadership position, and I think that is great because women can get into a leadership position, but we need to do more. I wish to see that we put in more conscious effort when we're thinking about committee and work group and leadership position to ensure that we have diversity. It's not just women, it's to have that diversity.
These gender biases that we have had since we were kids, since our parents' generation, since the generations before that, we need to really examine what is it that is preventing us from seeing that the world should be equal as far as gender is concerned. I think that's the first step. If we can't get past this gender bias, whether it's conscious or subconscious, we wouldn't be able to implement what we need to implement to ensure that everybody has a fair opportunity. I mean, structures, of course, they have to be in place, but I would say that mindset is the first thing that we have to work on.
For a start, we can actually ensure that, for example, we will not organize meetings before 8 or after 5 or on weekends. We should be more family friendly.
For myself, I'm looking forward to cognitive bias training. So I think I can learn a lot from these workshops because it's going to help me recognize my own bias and how sometimes we respond to situations with stereotypes. So I think that's going to help me make better decisions that will affect myself as well as others.
Firstly, I can support my husband in his career, and my husband has supported me in my career. Likewise, I can bring up my children, my sons, to support their wives in their career. I can bring up my daughter to support her husband in his career. I think that's what we each need to do because some of us are given the legacies of our past. And if we can only change the future, bringing up our children right. This is what I think I can do individually, and I hope to lead by example.
As an individual, I think I would first take a hard look at my own privileges and also my own biases. I would make a greater effort to value different perspectives and to acknowledge differences are not necessarily be a difficulty in terms of the assimilation into the work culture, but that it could be an opportunity for growth and innovation. Plus, also, I hope to hold myself and hopefully my fellow colleagues accountable to equity practices.
We have to suggest and support policies or initiatives which promote equitable workplace. Most importantly, as an individual, we have the responsibility to create, build, and support an inclusive and equitable workplace through our mindset that we are all equal and alike, and through our behaviors, how we treat each other equally, and how we make decisions objectively.
I like to be able to advocate for women to be more strategic in life so that we'll be able to strike that balance between professional and personal life while continuing to propel ourselves without compromising our sense of individuality. Same time, empower women through the many platforms available, like for example, Wish, to bring about a realization that our role in the society and in the industry is equally valuable and recognized.
Having Wish as a support group for females in science and healthcare is already a very good initiative and a new step for females to be aware of issues that we face and to support each other as we continue to work.
Some interesting and inspiring ideas from our fellow NUHS colleagues. It is now time for the panel discussion. I will invite Minister Indranee Rajah, Associate Professor Audrey Chia, And for those who might have missed the very beginning, our third panelist is Professor Doris Yong, who's head of the Department of Family Medicine here at NUHS. If the three of you would unmute yourselves and join me and Raymond in this virtual panel discussion. Thank you so much. The first question, I'm going to get the ball rolling, and it will be for Minister. We were all heartened by the announcement, of course, of the government's review of gender issues that you also talked about earlier. Could you give us a little bit more about how the process got to this stage? How long did it take, for example, and have there been any key insights that could be useful, so far anyway, that could be useful for advocating within our individual communities and our individual organizations?
Thanks very much for that question. It's been how does one put it, an evolution. So when I first came into government in 2012, some of the things that we started looking at were harassment, for example, and that resulted in the Protection Against Harassment Act, as I mentioned earlier. So, about a couple of years back, we did amendments to the Penal Code, and that was very much fueled by what we saw in terms of domestic violence, acts against those that were vulnerable, majority of which were women, not all, but majority of which were. And so in the period 2011 to 2015, we were already working on that. In the last term of government, we started to see newer things, things like the Me Too movement, which sort of picked up on things that had been sort of been underlying there for quite some time, but it sort of surfaced. There were the instances in our universities, for example, of trying to video female students without their knowledge whilst they were in the restrooms, and there is the organization's response to that, the support that was provided. And at the same time, we've also been constantly struggling with the idea of how do you better support women in the workplace? How do we also make sure that we have stronger families? And so all of that sort of coalesced around, a large part of it had to do with women. And so that was how the idea of the task force came out, because, we've also been talking about Singapore Together and having the Emerging Stronger conversations, one of which is Emerging Stronger as a Society. So you can see all these different strands, but when you pull them together in the context of the challenges that women face, it became clear that one, we need to have a conversation about this. We need to make a concerted effort about it. It must be across all areas of life, with working, at play, at home, whatever it is. And when you come up with recommendations or solutions, it has to be holistic. Holistic is a much overused word, but I think there's a reason for it, because you can't just have a single measure or single policy or single recommendation. It doesn't work like that, right? Whatever you do in the office may have a knock-on effect on the home, and vice versa. So that's really the background of it.
Thank you. Yes, I think well put. It's a complex issue, and COVID-19 thrown into the mix. Again, remains to be seen. Will it be a catalyst or will it be a regressor, as Prof. Chia said?
Thank you so much, Minister. I will probably address the next question to Prof. Doris. In your decades-long experience with trying to achieve gender equality, what are the biggest obstacles you've faced?
Thank you. I have been listening to all the presentations today, and I just felt over the years, I feel the most the obstacles that actually I face is trying to convince university. Now I'm talking about STEM academic environment where I come from, which is science and healthcare, is to convince the university and other leaders that inequity exists in the university, in research centers, in faculties, in departments, then they exist. To convince them is the hardest bit. Today, I've just heard many of the video, they address equality. I think there's a difference between equality and equity. Equality means we're all equal. Equity means there's something already existed that differentiate men and women, which is childbearing. And don't forget, there is a big difference here. And if we don't address that, if we don't make the university recognize that women will take time out, that there will be difference to have their family, and that there will always be inequity. And trying to convince that was the biggest obstacle I have, and almost have to educate them about the differences between men and women biologically.
Thank you, Prof. And just a follow-on question to that, ironically, this question actually came in from one of the participants who are listening in today. And that question was, you mentioned a little about having women leaders in leadership position. The question was, how can we change people's belief that women are not as good in certain leadership positions or STEM in general, to your point earlier? And I have a follow-on question to that. I'll let you answer that first, and I'll have the next one from there.
It's interesting, isn't it? When I think a few of the video comments were women are now getting more into science, into medicine, and even PhD students, so we're talking about STEM. The intellectual capacity is there. The high school education support is there. But to me, when you want to address, are women can be good leaders in the area, I say yes. Just look at the Nobel Prize, look at Kamala Harris, look at all the talent is there. So of course, I would say that women can be leaders, but I think there's one important area we must talk about is actually what are the opportunities, equal opportunities for women in the workplace, equal opportunity for women in leaders. The opportunity is the key, and also to address leadership. Women do leadership differently, I'm sure Audrey would know, but also to give, when there's a period of absence due to child rearing or due to caring, they need to have opportunity to bring them back to the workforce. They need to have mentors, men and women, to be able to share with them that these opportunities in the policies, systematically, the university, the organization, we value your contributions, your output relative to opportunities. It's most important that we give them the courage and the confidence that they can come back, and the system, the organization, the promotion criteria, the gender representation on promotion criteria, and on the, that we talk about how do we get to be professors, how do we get to be leaders. The metrics can be the same, the impact factor, the HR1 index, but the opportunity has to be a bit timely so that we allow for the denominator to be a little bit less, so that we bring them back with postgraduate scholarships, to give them the talent that they have, to continue to develop it when they come back after having children, fellowships, postdoc training that they can do at home. We need to overcome all those structural barriers for promotion and for opportunity, because without promotion, without going through the steps and steps where I think women have the potential for leadership, but we have to create opportunities and bring them back and change the policy, which is most important for any organization, policy, structure, governance. Without policy, I don't think it will get us anywhere.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. And if we are to tap on your experience both in Melbourne and in Singapore, and you spoke about policy changes and things that we need to see, are there specific changes that you would like to see in NUHS that would make it a more equitable workplace?
Yes, I love the way you use equitable and don't use equality. Yeah, yes. Right. We start off not being equal. Let's face it. You know, unless men and women, men can have children, we'll never be equal. So I love equity, and so I I would say NUHS and NUS started to have the assistant dean, equity and staff development. I would like to have a subset called equal opportunity for women in the workplace, because we're different, and Audrey already talked about that. So we've got the assistant dean. I want metrics. I want each department head to be able to know in their department what percentage of women are at what level A, B, C, D, E, or assistant professor for academics as well as the professional staff. And then each year we have to have a report card. How are we doing? And I want to showcase also some of the ones that we did in Australia, where we actually it's called taking it to the heads of department. Every year they have to give us a report card, and then it doesn't matter. We just share how we get there, what are the good examples, and how we gradually reversing the curve of tutors to professors. The curve get reversed, but they need to be reported and then share with us how they do it. So at University of Melbourne, we have a associate dean, which is very senior as education and research and equity staff development. It's not hidden and buried. It's actually as part of the senior leaders at the university level. The vice chancellor addresses that. The provost addresses that. All the deans and the head of department, we all have to implement all the policy, and it permeates through the whole culture. And I think having that report card to me was what we did in Australia, in Melbourne University. And we're all accountable, and then we offer support to the departments to find it a bit more difficult to recruit women. And we have men and women mentors to raise the bar for promotion for women relative, remember, outcome relative to opportunity. It's very important that we
Thank you so much for stating that so clearly, Professor Young, and for, of course, all your help and as a mentor to WISH. I'm going to interject with a comment and then an announcement, and then I will direct the next question to Prof. Chia. So get ready, Audrey. The comment / announcement is that yeah, so as Doris said, it's important for schools and organizations to make that commitment and to say out loud that despite gains we've had, for example, in the medical school and having achieved equity or equality at the entry into the pipeline, we still have gaps at the leadership end of the pipeline. And Yong School of Medicine has developed a policy statement that will be communicated to everyone in the school to affirm this commitment, to recognize the gains, but commit what is further required to create our environment and shape a culture within the school to achieve gender equity. So raising awareness, much as what we're doing through these webinars, facilitating access and promotion for women relative to opportunities, addressing misperceptions, unconscious bias, and so on. So that is a great step for us. My question now to Audrey for you is, could you talk a little bit, and I think I heard you during the COVID updates from Singapore talk a little bit about this, how maybe talk a little bit about differences in how gender equity is viewed in Asia versus the Western settings, what might be unique in our context, and perhaps a strategy that might work better from the ones, some of the ones that you mentioned in Asia versus the Western cultures.
Sophia, sorry, I lost you there for a while. Can you repeat the question quickly? Yeah.
Compare and contrast your thoughts about how the gender equity environment is perhaps different in Asia versus Western context, and what strategies might work better for Asia.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was very happy to hear about, Minister talking about boys learning to cook and so on. I think, it is quite different. Every year I get to interact with a group of executive MBAs from Norway. And, the way that they've been brought up is so different, right? And I think these changes have to take place at societal level. Just to give you an example, one of the guys came up to me and said, I cook, I clean, I sew, I even go with women to buy shoes, and yet nobody wants me, all right? And I told him, just come to Singapore, right? He'd be snapped up in no time, right? The point is, right. So the expectation in each society is so different, yeah. The things that would work here and not work elsewhere, well,
I think women just need a push, a little push, yeah. And what we found is that we can put out all these leave schemes, flex work, work from home, whatever it is, opportunities. Women tend to think about these opportunities a bit more. So we tend to ruminate over these offers and opportunities before we actually step up to take them, right? So we don't just offer opportunities, but we also offer resources, we offer support as we go along. And I think that's the way to do it. We just need to encourage and support along the way. So don't give an opportunity or a task without actually giving us the support, the training, the resources, and the flexibility and authority to carry out these whatever tasks and roles we've been given.
Thank you, Audrey. One question for Minister coming up. And this is coming from Esther Ko in the Q&A chat. My employer does not recognize my parents as my dependents, speaking of an aging population, even though I am single and have no brothers. I'm allowed to list children as dependents. With our aging population, parents too should be recognized as dependents. Will this norm be changed?
I think your employer needs to broaden its mindset, because obviously, as I mentioned in my speech, it's not just children. As our population ages here in Singapore, many of us have to care for aging parents, myself included. My mom is 97. So, I know exactly how it feels when you have to take a parent for a medical appointment or whatever it is. So the short answer is that the approach employers should take is that there should be flexible work arrangements for family, because family will cover pretty much everything. I mean, in some cases, it may not just be your children. I mean, if your husband or your wife is not feeling well, you've got to do something, and you may have to take them to hospital or whatever it is. So it should be for family. And that's the whole idea about making Singapore a family-friendly place. And we need to get employers on board for that. The tripartite standards for unpaid leave for unexpected care needs, for example, don't talk in terms of dependents, but they think in terms of family members. So it would cover parents, spouses, children, whatever it is. So I think your employer needs to have a conversation with the tripartite council, because really you shouldn't be having a very technical approach to this. You need to have a common sense approach. What makes an employee happy, willing to work for the organization, loyal to the organization? That's when you have an employer who is supportive. And support can take many forms, because emergencies and needs don't fit easily into little boxes. They can come up in many different ways, shapes, or forms. When I was in private sector and I had a team, there would be things that crop up, and they would come to see me to ask if they could take leave this afternoon because something happened at home. And I would invariably say yes, because firstly, if I said no, they're going to be sitting down there worrying and wondering what's happening at home. They're not going to be very productive anyway. And if I were them, and understandably so, I would be very resentful, because you don't let me go and take care of my family members. And invariably, I found that if I was flexible on this, they were appreciative, and they gave back in so many other ways. I mean, you don't do it because of the giving back. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think that the real key then is to have a mindset change on the part of the employer, but you could also gently point them to the fact that for the tripartite guidelines, for at least for unexpected care needs, it certainly includes parents. Whilst I'm at this, could I just take a couple of other questions that I see in the chat box?
Yes, please do, Minister. We have participants are staying with us, so I think everybody's very invested in this topic. Do go on.
Okay, so there was a question by Lee Si Leong, I think, on the tension between flexible work arrangements and productivity? And then also, how about equity for those who face demands at home and unable to commit more time at work? So the first one, which is linked to what I said earlier, flexible work arrangements does not necessarily mean less productivity. You can still be very productive at home, except, of course, when it's certain types of essential services. And of course, in healthcare, you do need to be there face to face with the patients or those that you need to deal with. So I would say that for sectors where stuff does not need to be done in the office, it is not client-facing or patient-facing, if it can be done at home, there's no reason why you can't be more flexible. Then for the other ones where it does need reasons, the real question the employer needs to ask is, do you have enough people to make sure that everybody can perform at optimum productivity? Because it is not optimal to make somebody just put in more and more and more hours. I mean, out of a 24-hour day, if you're working something like, 20 hours, how productive are you going to be the following morning? And if this continues for days on end, after a while, you will just get burnt out. I know that the healthcare professionals have actually been having a hard time of it with COVID-19, but even more so in some other countries where they're really, really short-handed. So if it's a short-term shortage, I think we can all understand and live with that. But really, if it's a chronic shortage of manpower, it is the employer's responsibility to ensure that there's enough people and resources to get the job done. And that's how you get productive employees. And I think your second question, ensuring equity for those who have demands at home, unable to commit more at work. Again, that one I think is, if your employer is broad-minded enough and willing to allow flexibility and measures it by the results. There may be some times when, well, you just really can't put in the hours in the office, but are you able to achieve a good result from home? That's great. But if it's one of those things where, because you can't put in more hours at the office, you cannot therefore achieve a certain outcome, then it may be worthwhile to evaluate the designation or the position and to ask whether there is something else that may be more suited to your circumstances that might still allow you to have an achievement at work, a different career progression, for example. When I was at MOE, one of the things that we looked at for teachers was that the common assumption was that progression meant that you would, become a vice principal or a principal, but some of them actually didn't want that supervisory role. They just wanted to be very, very good teachers and excellent at what they did. And therefore, the master teacher role was created, which allowed for excellence, which allowed for career progression, but a different path. And if that is something that organizations can look at, then you still allow your people to achieve at work, even though they don't necessarily have to follow the same route as the others. And I think there was one last question that I saw my name from Shweta, who was asking me about dysphoria or cramps, I suppose, as they're more commonly referred to, and how that should be dealt with because it's not specifically referred to in HR rules. I mean, my sense of it is that you don't have to list out or identify every single type of illness or health issue. The broader principle should be that if your employees are not feeling well or for health reasons on a particular day, they can't really perform very well, then you should let them take leave or at least have some time off. It depends on the organization whether they want you to formally take leave or whether they'll say work from home or whatever it is. But the bottom line is, if an employee is not feeling well, you shouldn't be forcing them to work. Again, and it's not limited just to women's health issues. Men have issues of their own. When I was in private sector, I would regularly, okay, not that regularly, but from time to time, I'd get a call from a very hungover male lawyer who would say, I'm really sorry. Can I come in late this morning because last night, I was out, whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, if I tell him he has to come in right now, he's really not going to be much use anyway. And I'm really worried that the research may be research that is not done in a state of sobriety. So I have no idea what research is going to come out of that, right? So I was like, okay, go and sleep it off. And then when you feel better, come into work and then you finish it for me this evening. So yeah, they cheerfully put back the hours at the end of the day, but at least he did so with a clear head. So I think you can't sort of make a policy for every single health issue, but the broad principle would be take care of your employees.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you for your candid insights and more importantly for spending the time with us. There are many questions that are out there that we hope we have enough time to actually go through, but unfortunately we are actually at the end of the discussion. We will collate some of these questions and hopefully we're able to send them out to yourself, Minister, to Prof. Audrey and Prof. Doris, to get some of these answers back to the many participants who've actually sent the questions through. Thank you once again so much for the insights that you've shared. And also thank you so much to all the great questions and engagements from the participants who've actually logged in today. I hope everyone's enjoyed the session as much as I have. I've gained so much from all the sharing from the speakers, from the panelists today, and also from the questions that have come in and from the previous webinars in the series as well. I also want to thank the organizing committee for having me co-host this. It's the last in a series that I'm co-hosting with Sophia. It's been a great experience for me and privilege to be able to share the stage with so many of you. And finally, just a reminder that the chat box is open for comments and feedback. Do send that feedback through so that we're able to continue to better ourselves as WISH brings the next series across to everyone out there. Thank you once again, everyone, for the time and the candid insights. Sophia?
Thanks, Raymond. Equally, it's been a pleasure and an honor to share the Zoom virtual stage with everybody here. Just to remind everyone that this current webinar and the previous two actually are available, and this one will be available as a recording on the NUS School of Medicine YouTube channel. So feel free to look those up. We will also be, as soon as we wrap up the webinar, we'll be treated to another inspiring performance by Voices of Singapore. So those of you who need a moment of Zen for your afternoon, please stay on and don't log off just yet. Thank you so much, Minister, Prof. Audrey, Chia, Prof. Doris, Yong, Raymond, the entire WISH Exco. There are many other people who we really need to thank, including our Dean, our CE, and some others that you will see in our rolling credits in a moment. But hope to see everyone in upcoming WISH events if you're part of the NUHS community or if you're one of our partner organizations, particularly in STEM, but often we do discuss issues, and as you've heard from today, that are quite horizontal to women and indeed men in the workplace who may face similar issues. In the end, diversity and inclusion makes our organization and our teams and our country better. So thank you so much for being with us, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
everyone, I am Darius Lim, Artistic Director of Voices of Singapore, and first and foremost, we would like to thank NUHS WISH for inviting us to participate in this wonderful event. Today, we would like to present you with a very special song called In One Voice that was written some 1.5 decades ago when I was still serving the nation. And this was initially written for the gathering of the Asian police right here in Singapore, a festival called Asianapol. And through the years, Voices of Singapore has used this song in one voice for our National Day celebrations. In One Voice speaks about the unity and strength of the people here in Singapore and reminds us that each and every one of us has a voice that we can draw from within, and reminds us also that we are all part of one bigger voice together, and that in numbers and together we are stronger. So from all of us at Voices of Singapore, take care everybody. We hope you enjoy this and hum along when you can. From all of us again, take care and see you.
With one voice we will live it. Beside